to it, everybody. TJ Wingard here with you for 32 Beat Writers. This is the newest edition of Beyond the Tape. You can tell I'm still here in the hotel room down in Mobile, but with practices wrapped up here at the Senior Bowl, we do have the game on Saturday. Some things may change there. Maybe that does boost the stock for some of these guys, but everyone, a lot of people are here for the practice sessions, and it was a great 3 days of practices. Thanks everyone who checked out our content. If you missed it, maybe you're just now checking out 32 Beat Writers, be sure to give us a follow on X, and of course, check out the other content here on the YouTube channel. With all that said and done, let's go ahead and jump right into us. And just so you know, this is gonna be far from the last mock we do here, so there's gonna be a lot of possibilities, a lot of things I want to explore in these mock drafts. So if today's maybe the mock that you're like, I didn't love what he did, don't worry, there will be plenty more to explore, more possibilities. But we kick things off with the Tennessee Titans. For right now, I'm gonna go ahead and stick with Cam Ward being the #1 overall pick. I think there's a non-zero chance that they do move back. I mean, this is a team that could use more top 100 assets. They could also take advantage of a couple QB-needy teams inside the top 6, looking at the Giants, looking at the Raiders. So it depends on the kind of approach that the Titans want to take here. Titans fans, let me know, how patient do you think Mike Borgazzi wants to play it here, the new general manager? But for right now, if there's a quarterback I'm willing to stick my neck out for at #1 overall, it is Cam Ward. He is my QB1. A lot of other needs on that team, though, so trading back, I think, is certainly a possibility and worth discussing. But Cam Ward, love the arm talent, love the confidence, and we're talking about a guy 6 years ago who's playing high school in a wing T offense. So he's made so much progress through a few different stops, a few different systems, and I'm really excited to see what his trajectory is at the next level. He kind of makes me think of Jordan Love. Just in case you're new to the channel, I haven't heard that comp from me. I don't love comps, but that's one where very calm, very poised, or not necessarily always poised per se, but like calm, cool, collected. You could say poised, and a great arm as well to go with it. So yeah, Cam Ward, #1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. That takes us then to the #2 overall pick with the Cleveland Browns. I'm gonna go Abdul Carter. I went back and forth between him and Travis Hunter, which the other one's gonna go 4 overall. So not to spoil too much there for the Patriots, but I thought about Travis, but I like their corners, and Elijah Moore's a pending free agent for wide receivers. So maybe, and it depends on too, like, is Travis a corner or a receiver to you? Again, just in case you're new here, I see him as a corner. I think he's an awesome receiver. He's my receiver 2 in this class, so that certainly says a lot. Honestly, he could be receiver 1 if he played that full time and had just a little bit more detail, maybe a little more nuance into that side, and also maybe a little bit more into his frame. 185 plays a little bit more at corner than it does at wide receiver. Nevertheless, I think there's a world where you can balance that. But for the Browns here, they're not going to trade Myles Garrett, and also quarterback's going to be a question. Do you go Shadur Sanders here? I understand, but I think Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have enough wins under their belt, and that comes with the caveat, the asterisk that it depends on how much Andrew Berry was pushing for the Deshaun Watson stuff. I'm not in the building to know if that was mostly ownership, mostly him, 50-50. That will certainly change the complexion of it. But more often than not, those guys have made smart moves and smart decisions. Stefanski, 2-time Coach of the Year winner. So if they can have this type, if they can talk ownership into being patient and wait, just give us one more year. 2026 is the year we want to draft a quarterback, not 2025. I think you go Abdul Carter here, partner him up with Myles Garrett, and essentially with that pass rush plus their corners, and whether it's Jameis Winston, whether it's Kirk Cousins, hopefully better at a second year off of that injury, I think there's enough there with that defense to where you could essentially win a race to 20 more often than not. With that pass rush, those corners, you just need competent enough quarterback play. Maybe Derek Carr, if he's a post-June 1 cut for the Saints. A lot of different possibilities there. And also you could go later round quarterback. You go into the second. We're going to have a guy go into the second round of this mock. So that's certainly a possibility. Browns fans, let me know what you think. This also could be a trade down spot, but it takes 2 to tango, and I'm not necessarily sure there's a team chomping at the bit to move up to #2. And now I'm going to sound like I'm talking to both sides of my mouth here, because Shadur Sanders is going to be the pick here at 3. But ultimately what I said there, I think the Browns have a slightly longer leash, Stefanski and Berry, than Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, which I don't think that's controversial to say. I mean, those two guys kept their job, and it's pretty clear that it's because now it's their turn to draft a quarterback. So they got to come away with one. So again, I think there's a world where maybe they're talking to Tennessee. I think that's a possibility. But nevertheless, we have them stick and pick here at 3. Shadur Sanders gets to work with Malik Neighbors, good offensive mind, and Brian Daboll. He may not be the perfect head coach, but I do think he's a good offensive mind. So Shadur Sanders there at 3. Giants desperate. I think the Browns can be a little bit more patient than the Giants. And then easy one here for the New England Patriots. You go Travis Hunter, and full-time corner. In my eyes, play him opposite of Christian Gonzalez. That fires me up just thinking about the prospects of that. Also, he could be a guy that in key situations, third and longs, or just third downs in general, red zone, you use him 10 to 15 reps per game on offense. But I could also see where New England is like, hey, we're good at corner, we love him as a receiver, and that's what we're tapping into. So it kind of, I don't want to say it can't fail, because that's a dangerous thing to say when it comes to the NFL draft, but it's twofold. I think there's a high likelihood of this working out for New England. And the other thing is, too, like just long-term position flexibility might be the number one value that Travis Hunter brings you. Maybe you need him immediately to play receiver, down the line to play corner, or vice versa. So that's another big advantage to drafting Travis Hunter, whether you're the Browns at 2, the Patriots at 4, shoot the Titans at 1. I think that's a possibility as well. So he's just a great football player, won the Heisman. And it's going to be interesting to see what the conversation is with how much he can be used on both sides of the ball, or is he just one guy that's an ongoing conversation through the rest of the draft cycle. Real quick, he is my number 1 player on my big board still, because I do think you can get value out of him on both sides. But I will say I had Carter go before him here, because I think one player, one spot, Carter's the best guy in this draft. But again, I think Hunter, you can get value out of both sides of the ball with him. Jacksonville Jaguars, this is one that you'll see in a ton of mocks. Mason Graham, they just got to get better on the interior. He brings a ton of value both as a run defender as well as a pass rusher. Tons of quicks, an absolute NFL-ready arsenal of moves, great quick hands, violent hands on top of that. Not much in Mason Graham's game that you want to critique or nitpick. Then we get to the Raiders, and I'm going to go Ashton Jeanty here. This one's tough. The quarterbacks are off the board. Could go Tet McMillan, could go Will Johnson, but it's a really bad free agent group for the running backs, and therefore this is kind of the best that you're going to get at that position. Pete Carroll taking over. I don't necessarily know if he's like chomping at the bit to go draft a running back with his first pick and somewhere in the top 6. A lot of holes in that Raiders roster. If the quarterbacks are all gone, maybe this is a trade down spot for them. Just not going to do trades just yet in these mock drafts. But GT, no doubt about it, he becomes their star there in the backfield. But I know it comes at a big opportunity cost. So Raiders fans, I'd love to hear from you. What are you prioritizing here? McMillan, Will Johnson, Jalen Walker, even? I think edge is probably not necessarily the first thing they're going to look at, but maybe. But or is it Jeanty? So let me know what you think there if you are the Raiders. Let me get on to the New York Jets. I'm going to go Will Johnson here. DJ Reed, I would assume he's gone. And I just think partnering up Will Johnson with Sauce Gardner, I mean, that is just a fantastic 1-2 punch there on the outside. And plus, you hire Aaron Glenn, cornerback drafted by the Jets. So this would be kind of a cool story that then his first pick, he gets to go out there and draft, in some people's eyes, CB1, accounting for Hunter, he's my CB2. But that's still a great story. And I think, man, what better guy for Will Johnson to get to work with at the next level than Aaron Glenn. So love that. And there's things that need to get cleaned up on the offensive side. I am going to go under the assumption that Rodgers is back for one more year. Again, I know it's a little dangerous, but we'll see. But if they have Rodgers and DA back, I'm kind of looking at, with the way the board fell here, Tyler Warren or Will Johnson. So Jets fans, let me hear who you prefer out of those two guys in that spot. Carolina Panthers, I'm going to take Jalen Walker here. This would be a great spot if Will Johnson could fall here. They could definitely use that reinforcements on the back end. But they also just need a disruptor. They need a game wrecker on the defensive line, and I see that potential in Jalen Walker. Explosive first step, violent hands. Right now, maybe he does play a little bit into contact a little bit too much. Maybe he's running a little bit too much into blockers. That said, didn't seem to bother him. He's a little bit on the lighter side, but he's also a really solid run defender. I think he more than holds his own in that regard. And also in this day and age of sim pressures and stunts and twists, his athleticism, I think, plays in that. And plus, his off-ball background, I think, with the sim pressures, could be really, really fun. You could use him in a lot of different ways and just keep an offense guessing wherever he's lined up. All right, now we get to the New Orleans Saints here at 9. I'm going to go Tetairoa McMillan. Really nice compliment to Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. We'll see what happens at the quarterback position. I'm not drafting another one of these guys here at 9. So, Jalen Walker made it here. That'd be certainly interesting. Will Johnson would be an awesome Marshawn Lattimore replacement, but those guys off the board, I like Tet McMillan. Get that possession X type. He's also an easy button in a lot of ways just because he is such a handful to try to bring down after the catch. A better mover than you would think for someone that big. So, and I don't think Rashid Shaheed definitely gives you yak ability, not necessarily Chris Olave's game. So I really like how that trio kind of complements one another. Let's get to the Chicago Bears. This is where I'm going to have Will Campbell come off the board. Whether it's guard or center, I've seen some people float that. I think that's interesting. Or even tackle, right? Like Braxton Jones has been solid, but it always feels like that sentence finishes with solid for a 5th rounder, which to me, if you have to make that caveat, is that something that you then want to look at upgrading? So I think whether it's left tackle, left guard, or center, Will Campbell is stepping into a starting spot next year if he's drafted at number 10 overall by the Chicago Bears. Other offensive linemen certainly in play. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. Who's your OT1? But I think, typically you want to prioritize position value for sure, but even if guard is where Will Campbell plays, I think he's just the best offensive lineman in this class. So for the Bears, with how big of a need that is, I think this is one of the rare times I'm going to tell you to don't worry about the position value, just draft the best guy for that unit. Let's get on to the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to have Kelvin Banks Jr. be the pick here. Some conversations, is he a guard, is he a tackle? And we'll see what happens with Colton McKivitz too. Maybe there's a world where Kelvin Banks flips over to the right side and becomes the replacement there. But I also see a world with Aaron Banks hitting free agency where you just play Kelvin Banks at left guard, and then whenever Trent Williams decides to hang it up, hopefully you've developed Banks more and more over the course of that time, and then he can slide over and be your Trent Williams heir apparent. So I think there's some immediate value here for the 49ers as well as long-term value with drafting Kelvin Banks at 11. Dallas Cowboys, a lot of the same stuff here when it comes to drafting for a replacement. You don't always want to do that, but also Jamar Stewart's actually the number 12 player on my big board. He may even slide up to number 10. I'm kind of tinkering with my big board, but it's just a small couple of tweaks there. But he's either player 10 or player 12 on my big board at the moment, and that's the exact spot I have him going here at 12, that is, for the Dallas Cowboys. Tank Lawrence, soon to be free agent. Maybe there's a way where they restructure a deal or bring him back on a lower number. The Chargers kind of have the same spot with Joey Bosa. So there's sometimes where these situations work themselves out. A guy wants to stay in a spot, and if that's the case, you also have Marshawn Nealon. You also have Sam Williams. But Jamar Stewart, with his power and length, you're getting all four spots on the defensive line, versatility from this guy. And he was great here at the Senior Bowl, so I'm going to be highlighting these guys who really stood out here in Mobile, and Jamar Stewart was definitely one of those guys, so much so he opts out of practice on day 3 and won't play in the game on Saturday. So it was that type of week for Jamar Stewart. And I think there's a world where you can work with Parsons, Nealand, Williams, and Stewart, and also some of those guys have had injury history. So don't always count on guys being 100%. I really like Jamar Stewart and how much versatility and how much I think he complements some of those other guys for that Dallas defensive line. Also a great run defender too. So I think like early down guy, you can trust him right away. All right, let's get on to the Miami Dolphins. Look, that interior defensive line, I think Zach Sealer's a good player. Calais Campbell, the ageless wonder. But it's time to replace Christian Wilkins on that D-line. I think, look at Walter Nolan, man. Here at Mobile, if he was on the field, there wasn't a single player getting off the ball quicker than Walter Nolan. And there was a lot of guys who had a great week here, no doubt about it. But Walter Nolan was a standout player in his quicks play. He's also got good power, right around that 300-pound mark as well. So in a lot of ways, like I said, I think this is your Christian Wilkins replacement, standout player against the run, but also his gap shooting ability and his quicks are going to give offensive linemen, gap shooting ability is going to be great against the run, and his quicks are just naturally going to be a headache for opposing offensive linemen, especially when it's, third and long, right? Like, let this guy pin his ears back. It's going to be a handful. But that being said, he also has a lot of power in his profile and, really just coming off a breakout year now at Ole Miss after 2 years at A&M too. So I think there is room for his pass rush portfolio, so to speak, to grow. But he's this up and coming, I want to get on this growth curve while I can, right? Like I want to get him while he's on the upswing. And I think the Dolphins are a good spot to do that here at 13. To the Indianapolis Colts, everyone stay with me. Tyler Warren, if you make it here, you are Indianapolis Colts. And this one's just easy, so I'll be pretty brief here, but brings blocking value. He's also middle of the field guy that will hopefully make life easier for Anthony Richardson if it were to play out this way. And it's one more weapon to an offense that has a lot of really good receivers, but I just think Warren brings you value in a different part of the field. Also a really good yards after the catch threat. Again, trying to get some easy buttons in that Colts offense, trying to get that completion percentage up for Anthony Richardson, right? So I think this just adds that much more dynamism to that Colts offense. And all of a sudden, it's almost kind of like the Packers of a couple years ago where it's like, you know what? They got a lot of dudes. They got a lot of depth. They're actually really solid. And honestly, where the Colts are at right now, Michael Pittman, I might like him more than some of those Green Bay guys. Warren, Tucker Kraft's awesome, but superstar potential there for sure. So you almost kind of look at those situations and a lot of depth, but almost maybe the Colts have a little bit of a trump card there. I don't know. I'll let the Packers and the Colts fans argue about it in the comments section. All right, let's get on to the Atlanta Falcons here at 15. I don't know if you heard of this guy named Mike Green. He had one of the standout reps down here at Mobile against Josh Connerly, albeit at right tackle, so give him some grace, but we'll come back to that here in a little bit. But Mike Green, man, 251 pounds at the weigh-in, that power on that rep, that really kind of answered some of the things that you just don't always see on his tape. And I think he was at 235 in the spring, so it's good to see him be able to get back up to a weight that NFL teams are going to be comfortable playing him 3 downs on. Super explosive and a really nice finesse rusher. So that's why when you saw that pass rush, that power rush against Connerly, again, albeit at the opposite part of the offensive line he normally plays, it's like, okay, wow, okay, this pass rush portfolio is starting to really round out. So get while the getting's good. He comes from a small school, but he showed out so well here at Mobile. Again, another one of these guys that did not participate in day 3 of practice. That says everything you need to know. To the Arizona Cardinals, this one's a pretty easy one, and it'll probably be one that I do a lot the rest of the draft cycle. Kenneth Grant, they just need to get better on the interior defensive line. Immediate boost to that run defense for that Arizona defense. And then also, he's such a good athlete at 340 pounds that I think there's already some potential there as a pass rusher and some untapped potential on top of that. So, I think this is an exciting prospect. Also, Jonathan Gannon coming from Philadelphia. So hopefully there's something in there in the back of his mind that, let's keep drafting trenches. That really worked out in Philly. So hopefully that's kind of the MO here for the Cardinals. It would make back-to-back years where they go defensive line in the first round. So I know that may be for some people, now let's spread the love. Let's get the rest of that roster with some more first-round talent. Also, you did draft a first-round receiver, so Parks having 2 first-round picks. Really like Kenneth Grant as an addition to that D-line in Arizona with guys like Robinson, Ojulari, Dennis Gardeck, so on and so forth. All right, to the Cincinnati Bengals. Really thought about Luther Burden here, but I'm going to stick with this for this mock draft. I could be wrong, and 32 beat writers, we were, Twitter kind of blew up yesterday, talking about the T. Higgins. Will he, won't he be back in Cincinnati? And right now it kind of feels like, since he's waffling on that proposition right now, I'm going to say he's back though. I think they make it work. If Joe Burrow's, at the press conference really kind of quote unquote pounding the table for it, I think they're going to make their franchise quarterback happy and they're going to get it done. And what does that mean for Trey Hendrickson? That's kind of up in the air and we'll see. But if there's a world where they can get both those guys back and then partner James Pierce Jr. up with Trey Hendrickson, my goodness, I think that pass rush in Cincinnati is going to be a whole heck of a lot better next year. Still need to see those guys on the interior improve, no doubt about it. Sam Hubbard, though, he's going to be one of these guys that's a pretty logical cap-saving cut. Sometimes these cap casualties, it sucks. Hubbard's not, he's a great person, and it's obviously Ohio State to Cincinnati, so a lot of things to like there. But the money's got to make sense. And replacing replacing Sam Hubbard with James Pierce Jr. That's a huge leap forward in the pass rush game. So love that fit there. Again, thought about Luther Burden. It's just going to come down to what happens with T. Higgins, which we'll kind of come back to that a little bit later on as well. Seattle Seahawks here at 18. Okay, now I'm going to go Josh Connerly Jr., which I know Seahawks fans are going to be like, wait a minute, didn't you just say that right tackle rep was one of the standout reps for someone else, right? And he got bulldozed? Yes. This is also the first. He's got let's pull it up real quick. I think he's got 4 college snaps at right tackle. No, he's got 2 college reps at right tackle. So this was kind of the first week where he got to explore that. And NFL teams, that's part of the Senior Bowl. We're going to put you in uncomfortable spots just to see how much we can expand that comfort zone and break the shell, so to speak. And that being said, he's one of the youngest players in this class. He's going to be 20 years old by the time he's drafted, 21, throughout his rookie season. And the growth from last year to this past season at Oregon, I look at that development and how much more confident he is as a pass protector. And I want to get on that growth curve. Same thing I said earlier about Walter Nolan. I want to get on these young guys, but I want to jump onto the progression train here. I want to see these guys continue to improve. So yes, we're asking him to flip over to the right side, but while you can get this guy on his upswing, I think you jump on it. And to me, I know that one rep against Mike Green, but I thought he looked really good here. Down at Mobile, of course, I'll have to go back and check out the All-22. There's only so much you can see, and one-on-ones going on both sides of the field. So maybe there's something I missed there. If you saw some reps that concerned you, I'd love to hear it, especially if you're a Seahawks fan, let me hear it. But I like Josh Connerly Jr. Abe Lucas can't stay healthy. Yes, you're asking him to flip over to the right side, but with rookie camp, training camp, I think you can get him there. And this guy's on the up and up, man. I want to jump on that as soon as I possibly can. All right, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 19. Let's go Mykel Williams. This is just a team that desperately needs edge rush. I think he's a nice complement opposite of Yaya Diaby, who wins with speed and finesse. Mykel Williams, a guy you can move all across the defensive line, wins with power and length. And he's also a guy that's kind of hampered by how Georgia uses him, more 4-eye than letting him play wide. And we'll see what the combine is. It's going to be hard to say he's going to be as good of an athlete as Trayvon Walker, because Walker's 95th percentile plus in just about every athletic measurement and just testing possible. But Mykel Williams, to me, I think is a more developed pass rusher than Trayvon Walker. So it's kind of an interesting trade-off there. But yeah, they just got to add to that. Really, they're going to add to that front 7 here in this mock draft, and it starts with Mykel Williams. All right, to the Denver Broncos. I'm not saying Colston Loveland is Jimmy Graham, because certainly different body types, but last year, it just felt like Bo Nix to the Broncos. That makes a whole lot of sense. It's like if you could smash, a Drew Brees and Taysom Hill toy together and make it into one, it almost might look like something kind of like Bo Nix. And I said that all last draft cycle. And again, Loveland is not Jimmy Graham, but Sean Payton's a guy that knows how to maximize the value of a tight end, especially in the red zone. And again, not nearly as big as Jimmy Graham, so that was a big component of it, but I would say more athletic and a better route runner as well. So again, there's a trade-off there. So I like adding this to that Denver offense. It's also one of the spots on that offense that you can most clearly see where an upgrade can be had and that's where you insert Colston Loveland. So really good tight end group there at the top, and it's just a great tight end group. Point blank simple. We're going to have a couple other tight ends go before this mock is over. To the Pittsburgh Steelers here at 21. This is where I'm going to have Luther Burden come off the board. I think with going Burden here at 21, there's still a world where, granted, Arthur Smith does not use a whole lot of 3-receiver sets. So I say this, and there's not a whole lot of overlap, more than likely, where we're going to see George Pickens, Luther Burden, and Roman Wilson on the field at the same time. That being said, if you go Emeka Egbuka here, you're almost just saying, yeah, we're done with Roman Wilson. I think Egbuka is probably the better version of what Roman Wilson brings to the table. That being said, I don't want to just throw away a third-round pick after 1 year. So I'm going to use Luther Burden here at 21. Love the yards after the catch ability. Also, good speed to be able to threaten over the top of defenses. We'll see what happens at quarterback. That's also going to be the other part of this. But if it's Justin Fields and you can give him an easy button, get the ball out quick, let Luther Burden be a handful after the catch, I think that certainly helps. This is another one of those teams, kind of like Cleveland, funny enough, 2 teams in the AFC North. They kind of play this way anyways. But with Fields under center, if it is that direction, add a Luther Burden. You could definitely go corner here too, but add a Luther Burden. I think there's enough there to where you could probably win a race to 20. But it is a team that needs to add to the secondary, so that is absolutely paramount, and we're going to do that in the second round with one of the guys I got to talk to this week down in Mobile. All right, to the Los Angeles Chargers. Fire me up. I'm loving the fit of Amari Hampton. I've had it happen in a couple of second rounds, but man, Hampton's just such a good football player that I'm not entirely sure he makes the Chargers' second round pick. Could be wrong, but you move on from Gus Edwards, you save the $4 million, you bring back J.K. Dobbins on a 1-year deal, and then it's a backfield of Dobbins complementing Hampton, Kamani Vidal sprinkled in there, specifically as maybe the pass catcher out of those three. And then realistically, like no disrespect to J.K. Dobbins, great year. He was nearly the first 1,000-yard rusher since Melvin Gordon. Wrap your head around that one. But it's probably a 1, maybe max 2-year deal. So long term, you're looking at Hampton and Vidal probably as the lead guys in that backfield for Los Angeles. And I love that 1-2 punch. I think it's going to be, I think if Hampton's there at 22, Greg Roman's going to be not just pounding the table, he might break the table. He might go Bills Mafia on that bad boy to try to get Amari Hampton there in Los Angeles. All right, let's get on to the Green Bay Packers next up at 23. I'm going to go Trey Amos here. He dropped out after 2 days of practice. He's another one that I just want to double check the all-22, but he was one of our first interviews here. And from the first 2 days, what I saw was pretty good, but I can't say, again, I'm bouncing back and forth from both sides, trying to see as many one-on-ones as I possibly can. So I can't say that I saw each and every rep, but his body, arm length, and just really man coverage prowess, both at Bama and then Ole Miss this year. He fits that Jeff Hafley defense, and I'm not sure that Jair Alexander is going to be back in Green Bay. Could be wrong, but if he's back, awesome. That's a great 1-2 punch on the outside. If not, you're trying to backfill Jair Alexander, who I think could be, like, I don't know, something's telling me he might be a Los Angeles Ram, but I don't know. We'll see what happens throughout the offseason. Still so much to be played out. We're like 6 weeks away from free agency starting, so a whole lot might change over the course of now and then, but I'm going to go with Trey Amos to add to that secondary that really, really needs it in Green Bay. All right, Minnesota Vikings, you're next up. I'm going to go Jahdae Barron, cornerback from Texas, and he's a guy that's played safety, nickel, and outside, and part of the reason I like this is Cam Bynum, Stephon Gilmore, Byron Murphy Jr., all free agents this upcoming year. So there's just a lot of potential holes. I think Bynum's going to be back, but still, those two corners leaving, and Byron Murphy, a guy who's played the nickel. Josh Metellus has been used there too. I just like the inside-out flexibility that Jahdae Barron brings to that Minnesota defense. Also, a more than willing tackler and a good blitzer too. So naturally, you just start thinking about, oh man, what could Brian Flores do with Jahdae Barron? And that starts to become an exciting prospect. So Jahdae Barron then goes 24. All right, next up, let's give the Houston Texans Emeka Egbuka. Thought about interior offensive line. Gray Zabel, this is kind of like where we start, like maybe the single biggest winner out of the Senior Bowl this week. Small school guy that looked awesome at all 3 interior offensive line spots. Certainly would make some sense here to go Houston, Gray Zabel, but I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka. I can see a world where they're hesitant to sign Stephon Diggs, creeping up on 30, coming off an ACL injury. You know, it depends on what the money is. And then I love Tank Dell, but and Egbuka gives you inside-out flex. So even if Tank Dell does get back to 100%, but as much as I love Tank, you know, the last 12 months, 2 major knee injuries, and then even if you put the gunshot, you know, aside, because you know he's probably back to 100% off that, but 2 major knee injuries with his play style, it's hard to guarantee he's going to be the awesome player that I was so pumped to see go to Houston in the 3rd round, right? Like he was one of my, I think he was my receiver 6 that year. Might have been receiver 5. I had to double check, but I'm a huge Tank Dell guy, and he was great here at the Senior Bowl a few years ago. But it's just, I don't think you can always guarantee that he's going to be able to come back and be the same dude. So I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka, a little bit of insurance, and it's also Ohio State guy reuniting with CJ Stroud. That's a pretty fun storyline in and of itself. Then I'm going to have Benjamin Morrison come off the board here at 26 to the LA Rams. Again, I can see a world where it's Jair Alexander, But even if it is, Jair Alexander plus Benjamin Morrison would be freaking awesome for a secondary that was pretty abysmal throughout the course of the season. And if not for a awesome pass rush led by Verse, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, and Byron Young, I think that secondary might have been even more exposed, right? And this, all of a sudden, the narrative could have been, oh yeah, the Rams got to double up at corner. They got to sign a guy and draft one, maybe two, So I think that pass rush helps hide some of the weaknesses there on the back end. But also, if you watch the Rams this year, I think you saw it. So with or without Alexander or someone in free agency, I think they're going to definitely dabble into that market. I think you add Benjamin Morrison, who we're waiting to see more about that hip injury, but when healthy, man press, super fluid, and again, the hip injury is going to be a bit of a question mark because he can flip his hips and turn and run with the best of them. So really like the prospect, just waiting to see more about where that injury status is at. 27th overall pick is going to be Josh Simmons in this latest 2-round mock from 32 beat writers. Simmons to the Ravens, Ronnie Stanley hitting free agency, a lot of injuries, and of course, right before he hits free agency, he finally gives him a full 17 plus games, including the playoffs. And I could see Josh Jones, he's only played well really at left tackle in the NFL. Maybe they think he can step in that spot. I'd be kind of down for that just to see. But I could also see where they don't want to risk it, right? And Josh Simmons, before the injury, was on his way to potentially being off to tackle number 1 in this class. So love the player, and the Ravens get a little bit of a discount just because he did end the year hurt for the Buckeyes. And then we get to the Detroit Lions here at 28. This is where I'm going to have Nick Scorton come off the board. I like the 23 film more than the 24 film, where he gets to play a little more stand-up, and I also think he came in at a little bit of a lighter weight. Would have loved to see him here at Mobile. Would have loved to see what his measurements and what the weight could have been, and then what he could have done in this loaded defensive line group. But nevertheless, late dropout, and hopefully he does get down to 270, 275. He would still be one of the biggest edge rushers in the class, but at 285, I think you saw some limitations, maybe a little less explosiveness, less top-end speed out of Scorton this year at A&M. But still, violent player who has a sneaky good spin move, solid arm length. We'll see. We'll get that double check there at Indianapolis. But right now, a good power rusher with a big frame, good run defender, and again, a little bit more nimble than you would think. And that kind of comes from his background at Purdue, where I think there was more finesse available in his game. So hopefully he can get back to that weight where he was with the Boilermakers. Washington Commanders, you are next up. I'm going to go with Matthew Golden, one of the biggest stock risers, probably, maybe the biggest stock riser out of the college football playoffs. I mean, he was just fantastic for Texas and really took over as receiver 1 with Isaiah Bond being injured throughout the course of the season. And, biggest games, they were looking to Matthew Golden, more than Bond. And that's not to say Bond's, I'm totally out on Bond, but Matthew Golden stepped up and he became the guy for that Texas offense. But I just think this Washington team could use one more pass catcher. Going back to the T. Higgins thing, look, if he hits free agency, that's a really appealing landing spot. I think it's a great 1-2 punch of Higgins plus T-Mac. I would be fully on board with that. But if Higgins doesn't hit free agency, the Bengals make it work. Matthew Golden plus Terry McLaurin, sign me up for that. Just one more crisp, sharp route runner with good hands. QB's best friend there, right? Make the middle of the field that much more open. Also think he's going to test pretty well in Indianapolis, so I think he checks the box there as well as a first-round wide receiver. To the Buffalo Bills, going to give him one of my favorite players in this class, Tyleek Williams. Ed Oliver is a super disruptive pass rusher, quicks, but he, under 300 pounds. He's not necessarily the biggest run defender in the league. Tyleek Williams, that's a big dude, and he's awesome against the run. And he's also super disruptive, and he's got active hands, quick hands for someone that big. And I think there's some untapped pass rush potential, and some of it's just like the Vita Vea stuff, where it's just like, if you can bull rush the center twice a week for me, that would be fantastic and be enough on top of your run-stopping value. But I wouldn't sleep on his hands. I think there's more to be had there as a pass rusher as well. So love to have him and Ed Oliver partnered up there on the inside. Edge certainly a possibility depending on what happens with Von Miller. So did want to throw that out as well. Pick here at 31, Philadelphia Eagles, Armand Membu. I mean, there you go, 34-inch arms. He's playing tackle. He didn't end up playing here. The Senior Bowl apparently came down with the stomach bug. He might have also come down with the I have 34-inch arms and I'm a tackle bug. So why risk my stock? Would have been nice to see him out there, and I don't want to speculate too much, and I don't want to offend anybody from the Membu camp or anything along those lines. But that measurement was kind of a win in of itself. So I see him as a tackle, and it's kind of twofold though, because some people see him as a guard. Mekhi Becton's probably going to get a bag this free agency. So, like we said with the 49ers earlier, play Membu inside, let him be your Becton replacement, slide him over to play right tackle when Lane Johnson hangs it up. Nice succession plan ready-made there for Philadelphia. Kansas City's next up, and this is just, look, I mean, he's not the number 7 player on my board. Malachi Starks is definitely someone who's good enough to go top half of the first round, and really the Colts kind of stand out, the Bengals, there's a lot of teams, depending on how much these teams change in free agency with trades, all that sort of stuff, that makes sense. But I also think Malachi Starks is just better than Brian Cook, and also Kansas City's Steve Spagnuolo has been willing to use 3 safeties more often than not. And you could use Trent McDuffie outside by bringing Malachi Starks in, playing him in the nickel. So it just gives, I don't know if this is allowed, but it gives Steve Spagnuolo more ammunition and more versatility across that defense. So sign me up for that. But he's just a player that's too good to get out of the first round. So it's best player available. I know we're ignoring left tackle. I'm not actually going to go left tackle in this one for Kansas City. If you're the Chiefs, I would just go try to find a free agent option or a veteran that you can trade for. You've done the young player thing the last 2 years, and it just has not worked out to the best results. So maybe you go get a veteran and a guy who you can more reliably count on than a guy who's going to fall to you at 32. That being said, it is a good tackle class, and I'm going to have an offensive tackle come off the board here to start round 2. Ariante Ursary. I thought he had a pretty good week here at the Senior Bowl. Still a guy that plays a little too tall, and maybe the hip flexibility isn't always there, but that left tackle spot's right now a little rough for the Cleveland Browns. I like DeJuan Jones more at right tackle, and we'll see how much longer Tyler Conklin's playing too, getting up there in age, making a lot of money, so that's always going to be a part of the equation. Did think about Gray Zabel here too. This is a team that's getting old on the interior offensive line, could get better there. Zabel would certainly make a lot of sense in that Kevin Stefanski zone-based run game. So Ursary the pick, honorable mention to Zabel. Pick 34, I'm going to have Siobhan Ravel come off the board here. Adoree Jackson, 1-year deal, so they need a corner with Jackson and Banks as is. I think they got the nickel right with Drew Phillips, but they need some reinforcements on the outside. And they've also benched Deonte Banks multiple times, so they might be ready to move on from him in and of itself. So it'd be curious to see if he becomes a trade candidate for a team that chance to buy low. I'm not saying that's a guarantee or anything like that, but I also think Banks plus Siobhan Ravel would be a really fun, really athletic tandem on the outside if Banks can get his head on straight or whatever, make it work within that building. And then you add Siobhan Ravel coming off the injury who, yes, small school guy, yes, he's injured, but trust the athleticism, trust the ball skills, trust the tape from 23. Really like him and should be a guy that goes certainly in the top 50, but honestly could even go even higher than 34. Tennessee Titans, you are next up at 35. I'm going to go Jack Sawyer. It was between him and Donovan Izaraku. Let me know if you're a Titans fan, who your preference is there. Man, I just think Sawyer plus Harold Landry and then the guys on the inside of Sweat and Simmons, you guys are going to be nails against the run. Love that. And also Sawyer adding some pass deflections into his game. Wasn't really a big part of his statistical profile. And then you get to the college football playoff and it feels like Jack Sawyer's just doing his best J.J. Watt impression, just swatting down passes left, right, and center. I think he's the more athletic of the two. He's still not super athletic and always going to win with the first step or bend, but I do think he presents that a little bit more than JTT. So I'm going to go with Sawyer here over those guys, but also Izaraku was awesome here, and I'm a big Donovan Izaraku fan, so it could be either one here, but Sawyer was fantastic on that college football playoff run. I want to reward that here at pick 35. All right, next up, Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to give him Darian Porter, cornerback from Iowa State. He had one of the top speeds, and I think he did finish the week with the top speed in practice. Rumor is he's going to run sub 4.3, and at 6'2", 197, running sub 4.3, or even if it's 4.3 on the dot, sign me up. That's a corner I can't quit, and I tweeted as much throughout this week. Really, really like the prospects of Darian Porter. He is maybe a little inexperienced on the outside of corner, less than 1,000 career snaps playing on the outside at Iowa State, just receiver turned corner, also a lot of special teams in his history. So I get that, but just trust the tape. And he's got great instincts, great feel, and obviously his receiver background comes into that too. I've been talking about this play all week when talking about Porter. There's a pick against Iowa where they go play action, they try to get the tight end leak up the left side, and Porter doesn't bite on the play action, sees Johnson the flat, sees he's not running a route, and then jumps the tight end leak. When does the tight end league not work, but it's that kind of background and that type of football instincts that I think really complements the athletic profile of Darian Porter. All right, let's go on to the Raiders at 37. This is where we're going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. The Dart Hive, you may come out. It's going to be Jackson Dart here at pick 37 to the Vegas Raiders. They didn't get a guy in the first round, and that's a rough-looking room right about now. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to go there. Are Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson on good terms? I didn't think so with how that ended in Seattle, but nevertheless, if they are, there's at least an opportunity to play Russ for a little bit and then get Jackson Dart some time to get acclimated with that playbook, get up to NFL speed, and then eventually maybe turn it over. I personally think he was the best quarterback here, but it still wasn't perfect, especially on day 3 where you wanted to see that improved week continue. Day 3 was kind of a mixed bag, especially in the red zone. Just wasn't the best in those tight windows. Didn't have anything disastrous, anything that kind of made you regret anything you said over the course of the week, but it just wasn't the improved, the continued improved day that we were hoping. Did have a nice ball that I tweeted out in the no huddle drill, but from the looks of it, you kind of see in the video, the defense is kind of going 80%. It had been a long week for the guys, but When it comes to being a pure passer of the football, Jackson Dart gives you a lot there. Quick release, beautiful spiral. I mean, very accurate. And you saw that in some of the best of one-on-one drills. I just wish we got to see a little bit more tight window stuff in the 11-on-11 period. But I do think it was a good week, and I think he's right now my QB3 almost by virtue because it wasn't a great week for Milroe either. And I do like Dart more than Quinn Ewers right now. All right, let's get on to the New England Patriots here at 38. This is where I'm going to have Donovan Izaraku come off the board. I think him plus Keon White would be a lot of fun there on the edge. Hopefully then you get Christian Barmore back on the inside and healthy. I think he could be a force multiplier for a guy like Izaraku and Keon White. Get them some more one-on-one opportunities, but 34.5-inch arms, good first step, very natural bend. I mean, ACC Defensive Player of the Year for good reason. Big fan of Donovan Izaraku. An edge is definitely a spot I would like to see the Patriots add to. All right, the Chicago Bears. I know there's a lot of hype for it. Can we get Ashton GT there in the top 10? Top 10. Don't be upset with Caleb Johnson here at 39. I mean, with Ben Johnson coming over, it's going to be that zone blocking scheme. It's going to be some gap too, but I think Caleb Johnson fits into both. Prefer him to be in a zone scheme, and now he gets to run behind Will Campbell. Like, how exciting is that if you're a Bears fan? Also a very natural pass catcher too, so I know you got DeAndre Swift who can do some of that, but Swift wasn't bad per se, but I think there's a world where you can certainly add to that room. And I think Caleb Johnson actually serves a nice compliment to a guy like that. And he's more explosive than a guy like Roschon Johnson. And I like Roschon coming out of Texas, but Johnson's just the better prospect out of those two. And maybe that's a guy you decide to move off of and trade this offseason. But Caleb Johnson there to the Chicago Bears. Like getting that potential bell cow for Ben Johnson leading the way in Chicago. All right, next up, the New Orleans Saints. Here we go, potentially the single biggest winner, other than, in my mind, Gray Zabel. Jack Bash also definitely in that. But Darius Alexander is definitely in that top 3. And I'm going to have him, you saw that PFF rank. That's going to come way, 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 way up. Those guys have been giving him a ton of praise. So just wait till they update the MDS here. But Darius Alexander was balling this week. At 305 pounds, he did it at both defensive end spots and both defensive tackle spots. And he was beating up on dudes who had great weeks like Connor Lee, had some good wins against Zabel, and Zabel did not lose many reps. But day 3, he started to show some weaknesses, and like guys like Darius Alexander, I think that just shows like that's how special he is. And I also, like, over the course of the week, I started to think that there were certain guys in certain position groups, and maybe day 1 D-line had the overall advantage, but I think by day 3 most of the offensive line had kind of bounced back and taken the upper hand, except against guys like Darius Alexander, who just kept getting better and better and better. And David Walker's another guy, not in this mock, but another guy that just kept getting better and better out of Central Arkansas, kept getting better throughout the course of the week. But Darius Alexander, for a defensive line that has aged really across it and some question marks all the way across it, Darius Alexander, name a spot on that D-line, he will line up there and he will kick some ass. Really love the foot speed, and I really love the hand speed. Very quick hands, and also a ton of power behind it too. So Darius Alexander, small school guy, but he made himself a lot of money this week. All right, to the Chicago Bears, again, at 41. And then, like I said, potential biggest winner of the week, Gray Zabel. Again, started to get a little bit of lost reps there on day 3, but it's just, it's tough. Guys start to figure you out. You start to become more and more familiar with one another. It was Josh Farmer and then really Darius Alexander. Guys who had good weeks there on the interior at the Senior Bowl. But Gray Zabel here, I'm going to go ahead and plug him in for the Chicago Bears. I know we already went Will Campbell, but it's an offensive line that could use a couple upgrades, right? Tevin Jenkins could be gone. Shelton can certainly be improved upon. Zabel could play center, and if Campbell's playing left guard, love that so much better. Also, you can get better than Matt Pryor as well. So there's kind of 3 spots on that interior offensive line that could be improved upon. So yes, it's 2 interior offensive line picks inside the top 41, but it's a spot the Bears have got to get better. And also think about Ben Johnson and think about that Detroit defensive or offensive line. I beg your pardon. You've got to get better there. And also, like, one more thing, Will Campbell might play left tackle, right? So then Gray Zabel can play any of those interior spots where I think you can get better. Honestly, in a perfect world, I think for the Bears here, honestly, the more I talk myself into this, Will Campbell at left tackle, Gray Zabel at center, I think that would be awesome. And right, think about how integral Frank Ragnow was for that offensive line when he was healthy. Zabel might be the center of the future there in Chicago. All right, let's leave that and let's get on to the New York Jets. TJ Sanders, another guy that opted out after 2 days of practice. Very good week. We got to interview him. TJ talking to TJ. Love that. He got to call me Tej, actually, so it feels like we've been best friends for years. But big fan of his game, man. Very explosive first step, ton of power behind his hands. Really standout run defender, but there's a nice pass rush profile there to be had too. Could use some more refinement when it comes to his move sets, but just with his athleticism and his power, like he'll play and get you production right away, and it'll buy you some time to try to develop that pass rush repertoire. And it would certainly help lining up next to Quinnen Williams. I think it's a guy who could teach him a thing or two about a thing or two. All right, back to the 49ers. This one I'm going to have Derek Harmon come off the board. PFF a little bit lower on him, and so am I, but I still think he's a top 50 guy. It's a little surprising to me that Birch is higher than Harmon, so we're just going to search his name. But I'm going to have Derek Harmon come off the board here. I do think shedding some weight made him a little bit more of an explosive athlete there at Oregon, and you're starting to see where his experience, he's just got a nice, refined moveset. He's also a guy that's moved all across that defensive line, him and Jordan Birch for Oregon. They moved him all around, so wherever the mismatch is, Harmon can take advantage of it. I do think, Shamar Stewart is kind of interesting at 11, another guy that can move all around, but he'd primarily play edge. But this is a team that I think you saw it. It's Javon Hargrave and not much else there on the interior. So I like having some insurance just in case Hargrave were to get hurt again. Or, perfect world, those two guys get to play next to each other. Sign me up for that if you're San Francisco. Also, something I just keep your eyes on, Joey Bosa, assuming that the Chargers move on from him. I think there's a non-zero chance he goes and plays with his brother, especially now that Brandon Staley is not the defensive coordinator in San Francisco. So keep your eyes out for that. And, potential defensive line of both Bosa's, Harmon, plus Javon Hargrave. How do you not get excited about that if you're a 49ers fan? All right, pick 44. I'm going to give the Dallas Cowboys Alec Ayumanor. I think he's a really nice compliment to CeeDee Lamb. Big body, ex-receiver, redshirt sophomore, so one of the younger guys in this class as well. You just play him on the outside, and CeeDee Lamb can play X as well, so you can move Ayumanor around, but I would just play him on the outside, keep CeeDee Lamb at the Y and the Z. I like him in the slot. Again, I prioritize slot position guys more than most, but I really like that fit. I think it's a nice compliment there. And one more weapon for new head coach Brian Schottenheimer. Yeah, I'm sure that's the hire all Cowboys fans were looking forward to this. It's good this coaching cycle, but it is one more weapon for that offense and for Dak Prescott. Let's get to the Indianapolis Colts. We didn't get to go safety in the first round, which I do think is a possibility. Again, Malachi Starks would be interesting, but if Tyler Warren's there, just pull the trigger. Xavier Watts is a really fun player, though. I'm interested to see what the 40 is. He doesn't look like the most fluid. I mean, not necessarily the most fluid. He is a very fluid athlete, but he's just not the most top-end speed guy where he's just flying around with his hair on fire. And he's not going to wow you with the measurables either, but high IQ football player, always in the right place at the right time. And Jesse Bates ran a 4.5. So I don't know if Watts is going to be quite that fast. I could see him in a more mid 4.5 range. That being said, it is kind of interesting with not Gino Auriemma. That is a completely different person. Lou Anarumo. Kind of similar names, right? But Lou Anarumo coming over as defensive coordinator and Julian Blackmon hitting free agency. Nick Cross could be a good free safety, don't get me wrong, but I do wonder if there is some Xavier Watts, if that could be a guy that Anarumo is like, yeah, that's the safety, that's my guy. He's a playmaker, I need that guy, I need a Jesse Bates in the back end. We kind of saw that at Cincinnati, so I do wonder if he would want the ball skills and just natural instincts of someone like Xavier Watts. Atlanta Falcons next up at 46. Another guy that looked awesome this week, and maybe a little bit of a rocky start at the beginning of the week. Also, one-on-ones definitely favor receivers versus corners. They just dictate the rep, so it's a little bit of a harder ask. But Azareye'h Thomas, he can go in the first round of this week, right? Like the right team falling in love with him, I wouldn't be shocked if it's someone there in the 20s to obviously all the way up to 32. But here he falls a little bit to 46. But dude, Azareye'h Thomas plus AJ Terrell, sign me up. So we get some pass rush reinforcements with Mike Green, bolster that secondary. If you're Raheem Morris, you are loving where you're at. Morris does play a lot of zone. Azareye'h Thomas is a man press guy, so maybe it's more of like a Pittsburgh Steelers thing if he makes it there. 52, totally fine with that. But I also think playing quarters is in a lot of ways man coverage off, and you're just kind of playing a lane. So I do think there's a way to where you can make it work. So not necessarily the one-to-one scheme fit, but I also, I think a lot of the same could be said about AJ Terrell when Raheem Morris went there too. So I think he's just a good football player, and you can make it work. All right, Arizona Cardinals back on the clock at 47. Just give him one of the most rock-solid, steady players in this class, and a guy that Daniel Jeremiah had go 10 overall in his mock draft. So maybe I'm missing something here. I really like Tyler Booker, and for a while there, he was my IOL 1. And, Donovan Jackson gave him a run for his money. Gray Zabel may take that over as well. But Booker's a great player and a good enough mover to be able to fit and get out in space and pull and fit into a zone scheme. But he's also a guy that's just a brute and has an abundance of power, both in pass protection with his anchor, but when it comes to moving guys off the line of scrimmage in the run game. So plug and play at left guard right there for Arizona, where I certainly think they could use an upgrade. Miami now at 48. We're actually going to have an interior offensive line run here. Wyatt Milam, 32 and 5/8 inch arms. Sorry, bud, that is a guard. And he struggled this week, I won't lie, but it's his first real reps playing at interior offensive line. He was a right tackle his first year at WVU, then 3 years at left tackle. So there's a bit of an adjustment period. Give him some grace, and his movement skills are just fantastic and would be a perfect fit into that Mike McDaniels run game. So I know it was a rough week. Still think he should go somewhere in the top 50. Trust the tape. It's great. it's going to be a little bit of a transition period, but also his tackle flexibility, could come in handy, say in Austin Jackson injuries there, or Teron Armstead. I know Patrick Paul's there, but one more potential tackle option certainly would go a long way for a team that has had injuries at that position. Back to the Bengals here at 49, and our third consecutive interior offensive lineman. Speaking of that man, Donovan Jackson, they have him as offensive tackle. I do think that is some added value that he showed at Ohio State that, hey, in a pinch, I can do it. And we've seen Orlando Brown Jr. battle injuries, so I'm seeing Donovan Jackson plug and play left guard, who is absolutely, they have one guy who's an impending free agent, but Jackson is definitely better than Cordell Volson, just in my opinion. But then he gives you the added flexibility of, in a pinch, could play some tackles, certainly did that at Cincinnati, and it's another Ohio State guy, then going to Cincy, which is always a fun story. Pick 50, I keep going back and forth. I came to the week with Mason Taylor as my tight end 3, but Elijah Arroyo, man, that is a guy that is now tough to quit after watching him this week. Just looks so fluid, whether it's running a wheel route down the right sideline, catching a pass from Taylor Elgersma, or it's a double move, shaking a safety out of his shoes over the middle of the field. It's the red zone work, big friendly target. And really the thing for Arroyo is he stayed healthy in 2024, and he really looks like it here at the Senior Bowl. Battled some injuries in 22, 23. I think part of that is like he came to Miami, and he said as much in our interview with him. Came to Miami at 224 pounds. Yes, it was over 3 years, so your body should adjust to that, but easier said than done. Adding 24 pounds and then playing football and dealing with all the contact that comes with that, it's easier said than done. So I feel like maybe his body just had a bit of an adjustment period, and hopefully he's healthy for years to come, because Elijah Arroyo, what a week here at the Senior Bowl, hands down one of the biggest winners. And I just think you look at that Seattle offense, and there's definitely something to be gained at that tight end position. Would love to see Elijah Arroyo in the mix there. And this is a team that's going to move on from Tyler Lockett. So there's targets up for grabs, and I think Arroyo would certainly be a good guy to send those targets to, right? Buccaneers here at 51. Like I said, a lot of emphasis here on the front seven. I just don't think that unit was as good as Todd Bowles thought it was last year with how much he wanted to blitz everybody but the Atlanta Falcons. And so we're going to go Jihad Campbell here. Also, like Levante David can't play forever, so eventually this is your passing the torch guy. But I do think they'll bring back David for one more year. I think they can make it work for one more year, probably $7 million again. Jihad Campbell, great as a blitzer. Some people see him as an edge rusher. I know Alex from Hail Mary Sports has said as much. I can respect that, absolutely. But I like him as this, off ball, because I think he's good in coverage and he's good against the run. So I am more comfortable with him off ball than I am Jalen Walker. I just think Jalen Walker's an unbelievable pass rusher. And Jihad Campbell's a great blitzer too, and he's awesome in the pass rush game as well. So I think this is a Todd Bowles guy, right? Not necessarily Devin White, but what they wanted to use Devin White as. I think Jihad Campbell can do a lot of that stuff, but also be a much better off-ball linebacker and actually play the run, actually be an impact player in coverage. So no disrespect to Devin White. He's had a much more illustrious football career than I could ever did, so no disrespect, but I think Jihad Campbell is that inside linebacker that Todd Bowles has been kind of looking to get alongside Levante David. All right, and we're actually going to stay at off-ball linebacker here at 52, Denver Broncos. I'm going to give him Carson Schwessinger. How about this? 90-plus PFF grade as a pass rusher. Only had 4 sacks, but I definitely think that's a part of his game. He's just great crashing downhill. Such a fluid mover. The change of direction for Carson Schwessinger is elite. 6'2", 225, so yeah, maybe he gets a little bit washed out at the second level, but that's going to happen with linebackers nowadays. They're just smaller but faster players. That's just where the league is at right now. But love his tackling, love his ability to crash downhill, slip between blocks in the run game, and he does bring something as a pass rusher, which I think is also interesting. Like we talked about Campbell for Todd Bowles, Vance Joseph certainly likes to send some pressure from the middle, and I think Schwessinger would be a nice weapon for him to use doing just that. Pittsburgh Steelers, again, maybe this is, if Azaria Thomas were to make it here, I certainly think they'd be pounding the table for that. Other really nice man coverage players, Maxwell Hairston, one of the more athletic corners in this class. Love the click and close ability he has. Was banged up this year at Kentucky, but I think it shows a lot of confidence in his game as a true junior. 3 years of playing experience to come to the Senior Bowl. Underclassmen, they're welcome to the Senior Bowl now, but that's a gamble sometimes. Seniors definitely makes a lot of sense, but underclassmen, you're kind of putting yourself out there. But I really like the confidence Hairston has in his game, and he's the man coverage corner. Pittsburgh, 5th highest rate of man coverage this past season. So him plus Joey Porter Jr. And that's the other thing. Porter Jr. has good long speed. Don't get me wrong, but he's also very handsy. Hairston, sure, sometimes he gets called for flags, but even better long speed, right? So I think he just brings a little bit more athleticism. He also said he's certainly open to playing the nickel, which I'm comfortable with that as well. Again, with the click and close, change of direction skills that he's got, he could be the Steelers' nickel corner of the future if this were to play out this way. All right, we're back to the Los Angeles Chargers. I was talking to some Chargers guys here, and I was like, any world where T. Higgins, and again, in this mock, I'm theorizing he's back at Cincy, but I was like, any world where that can make sense? And they basically all agreed, on paper, yes. but the money side of it might be a little tough, just because you're coming from a cash poor team in Cincy to the Chargers. I don't know if that necessarily moves the needle for him versus Washington, who Harris is willing to shell it out right now. So I'm going to go with Jaden Higgins. So if you can't get T. Higgins, go get Jaden Higgins. Not necessarily the world's greatest athlete, but showcase some nice route running ability. And of course, the contested catch ability as well, can work the sideline. So this is the big body guy that I think the Chargers are looking to add, move QJ into a more gadget yards after the catch role. Hopefully he can shore up those hands, but Ladd plus Jaden Higgins, I really like that as a 1-2 punch there outside for the Los Angeles Chargers and for Justin Herbert. All right, back to the Green Bay Packers here at 55. Maybe, I'm curious to see what Packers fans think about this one. I'm going to go Jack Besh. Jack Besh caught everything this week. And of course, we had a couple clips that started to make their rounds on X. And he was just one of these standout players. Again, one of the biggest winners out of the week. Good size, too, physicality, can play inside, can play power slot. He's definitely not going to run the 40 that Christian Watson, said. I mean, I don't think he will, at least. But that being said, with his inconsistent hands, it might be time to start having the conversation of replacing Christian Watson in that receiver room, which I know some Packers fans are really big fans, and there's definitely big playability, but there's a lot of inconsistency with his hands and his injury history. And I think Besh is a better athlete than Dontavian Wicks, and Wicks is a solid 4, So I like adding in Jack Besh. And this is a receiver room that, we talked about a little bit earlier when talking about the Colts and comparing him to Green Bay. But there's been this young, promising unit, and they need to get the ball at Jaden Reed more. I think he's the best of the bunch. But it's been a young, promising unit, but we haven't seen anybody take that next star leap. And maybe Reed will with more opportunities, but no one's taking that leap forward. So I think you keep adding that room, and I think his just steadiness and ability to, I'm telling you, the hands are fantastic. Red zone, inside, outside, he brings it all. So I think that type of steadiness, assured, type of presence on the outside and inside, I just love his hands, and I think that would bring a whole lot more than Christian Watson. So long tangent aside, not to throw Christian Watson under the bus, but I'm kind of intrigued by that. Also, Jack Besh, though, the Rams just want to shell out an extra pick and just move it in the second round. They don't have a second rounder this year. This is, if they move on from Cooper Kupp, that's the dude, if I'm the Rams, I'm looking at to replace Cooper Kupp. Just throwing that out there. All right, Buffalo Bills here at 56. Another off-ball linebacker I'm a big fan of, and perhaps the best player at Shrine this over a week ago, Chris Paul Jr. Love the sideline-to-sideline ability. Another guy with insane change of direction skills, and he can fly around the field. 6'1", 230, so yes, a little bit smaller, but again, that's how they build linebackers today. But his zone prowess and, again, the change of direction skills for, a linebacker room in Buffalo that's been getting thinner and thinner and battling a lot of injuries, and has had some guys leaving free agency. I like this to be able to add a little bit more to that unit. All right, now we're back to the Houston Texans, another huge winner this week. And this is not a guy that, hand up, I had watched a whole lot of. I'd watched plenty of LSU, but I just hadn't been locked in on Miles Frazier. Gonna have to go back and double check that because, dude, he was great this week. So good that after 2 days of practice, Matt Miller tweeted this out, Matt Miller of ESPN that is, that teams were asking to see if he would take some reps at tackle. And he looked pretty good there too. So big guy, redshirt senior, tons of experience, and an NFL-ready pass protector, or at least how it looked this week. An abundance of power to sit and anchor to. The hand placements were fine. Yeah, this is a guy that made himself some good money down here at Mobile. And, obviously with Houston Texans, we couldn't make the interior offensive line happen in the first round, but here in the second, there's some good options available. And I think Miles Frazier, his type of pass protection skill set on the inside, played both guard spots. That would be fantastic. Let's move Titus Howard back to right tackle. I think you plug and play Miles Frazier there at left guard. All right, Carolina Panthers. I gave myself a bit of an option route here. Actually, not yet. We're going to go with Mason Taylor. This did kind of come down to a few different guys. Could have been Tez Johnson. He had a great week here. Super polished separator, especially at the top of his routes. He's 156 pounds, so it'll take the right guy to get him into the offense where you're going to use him in motion, use him off the line of scrimmage. But, I mean, he's game for it. He wants to make this work. He was a great interview this week. And a couple other guys I definitely thought about here. Xavier Restrepo, who's going to come off the board in the next pick, just a little bit of a spoiler. But I'm going to go with Mason Taylor just because there is absolutely a clear upgrade to be had there as a pass-catching tight end. Canales didn't necessarily have that in Seattle or Tampa Bay, but I would like to see him add that to his offense and do Taylor. Him, again, came into the week as my tight end 3. I feel bad moving down to tight end 4, but Arroyo was fantastic. So it's tough. I mean, these tight end rankings are going to be really difficult, but another one of these guys who just caught everything that came his way. Mason Taylor was coming down with it. Contested catch, back right corner of the end zone on a go ball or on a fade route. Work in the back of the end zone, tight rope, getting 2 feet down. Contested catch, sure hands, he holds on, so you name it, Mason Taylor did it. Just an absolutely fluid athlete too. So yeah, real easy guy to get on the field, and I think a really friendly target for someone like Bryce Young going into year 3. Baltimore Ravens, already spoiled it. I'm going to go with Xavier Restrepo. I don't know. I haven't seen a whole lot about this. Maybe it's Jalen Royals, who I also thought had a good week here, coming out of Utah State. 5'11" with 200 pounds, solid wingspan. He could be the outside guy. But Zay Flowers can play inside and out, and so can Rashad Bateman. So, Restrepo's probably a slot only at the next level, but just don't overthink it, dude. Hashtag a good football player, right? Like, friendly target for a quarterback. You don't become Miami's all-time receiving yards leader without, that. Refined route runner, good eyes, always working back to the quarterback, very sure-handed as well. One of these guys that I'd love to have PFF Ultimate and see the in-game athleticism score. I'd venture to say his in-game athleticism is going to be better than what we see athletic testing-wise. So just trust him. He's a good football player. And this is an offense that could use one more guy, one more receiver. And if you feel comfortable, rotating him with Zay on the slot and playing some Zay Flowers outside, use him as a Y, really get him off the line of scrimmage. And if you're comfortable using Bateman in that realm as well, I think adding Xavier Restrepo just adds one more easy button to that Ravens offense that, do they need another one with potential now 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson? So, I don't know. Ravens fans, let me know what you think. Or if there's a different receiver you have in mind, let me hear it. Jaden Higgins would be great to see him fall here as well as that more big body guy that I think a lot of Ravens fans would like as well. All right, what do we got? 5 more picks. Detroit Lions here at pick 60. I'm going to go with JT Tuimoloau. Just a rock solid, steady player who really showed out in the college football playoff. Love the power, love the frame, arm length. Again, not going to win with speed or bend, but everything else the guy has. And he's a smart football player, refined move set, so he can beat tackles with a variety of moves. So really like that, and it's just one of these guys that if you're the Lions and you're competing for a Super Bowl, you'd love to get the high ceiling guy that really puts you over the top, but also a high floor guy at a position of need. Here at 60 would be a great add and a guy you could trust. And then you get some fun with Michigan guy on one side and Ohio State guy on the other. What could go wrong? Let's get to Washington at 61. I'm going to Princely Uman Mielen. I saw some people saying he was a loser this week. I wouldn't go that far. Especially day 3, we saw the speed and bend on one of the reps that we posted from 32 Beat Writers Twitter. And then, as they're vacuuming behind me, sorry if you can hear that. But he also had some nice run stops a few plays later. So 264 pounds was a great mark for him to show up at. And I thought he was pretty good against the run this week. He did get hurt on day 2, so maybe that's part of why people were like, wish we could have seen more. But definitely going to go back to the one-on-ones and double check and see what there. But in the team period, he was a guy that, especially in day 3, was standing out to me. And here at 61, just a guy that at Florida, at Ole Miss, has shown, I am a pass rush winner. And now he comes in even bigger and showcasing that, hey, I can stop the run at a decent clip too. Might be something there, and it's an edge group that could certainly use some reinforcements in Washington. All right, back to the Buffalo Bills. Here, I got an option. I'm between Tez Johnson and Kevin Winston Jr. Tez is definitely small, so some people are going to say he's a slot only, but could the Bills use him as a Y? Get him off the line of scrimmage, take advantage of his athleticism, use Coleman as the X. I'm intrigued by it. So I wanted to throw that honorable mention, but I'm going to stick with Kevin Winston Jr. That's what I initially had in my mind. Would love him in those split safety looks, and I think there's an upgrade to be had. Damar Hamlin, great story. Taylor Rapp, a player I've always liked, but I think there is room for improvement out of that safety room. So Kevin Winston Jr. missed this season with Penn State, but he's going to be a good tester. All Penn State guys seem to be. And he's just rock solid against the run, single high, free safety, in the box, you name it, Kevin Winston Jr. can do it. 2 more picks since it's 2-team in the Super Bowl. Let me know who you're taking, Chiefs or Eagles. I'm going to go Landon Jackson here for Philadelphia, just an NFL-ready run defender, day 1, so easy guy to get on the field, especially in early downs. But also Brandon Graham, I've been saying this for years now. Brandon Graham can't play forever, and he just continues to play forever, it seems. But eventually he's going to hang it up, and I think Landon Jackson would be a fantastic replacement for Brandon Graham. Again, more NFL ready from a run defense standpoint than pass rush, but that run defense gets him on the field and allows you to bide some time that over the course, by the time you get to that back half of the rookie contract, hopefully you're making some progress in the pass rush game. And then last but not least, Omar Norman-Lott going to be the pick to complement Chris Jones there on the inside. He looked awesome. Tons of first step quicks in his game, and also the hands. Just, Richard Sr., like a guy who has been polished over the course of his time there at Tennessee and really showcased that this week at Mobile. It was a loaded defensive line group, and boy, oh boy, they did not let down. Going through all 64 picks now, would love to hear your thoughts. Who's your favorite team? What do you think of the haul that I gave your team? Also, who went too high in your eyes? Who went too low? Who should have made the top 64 here? And that's updated 2-round mock. And also, let me know what you thought about the Senior Bowl. Were there any big winners that you thought I should have gotten here? Or what were your general overview and thoughts if you were watching the Senior Bowl from home on NFL Network, checking the clips out on Twitter, any and all ways that you checked it out? I want to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or you can DM me on X at TJ Wingert. Would love to hear those thoughts, of course. But that is going to do it for this one. Be sure to give 32 Beat Writers a follow on X. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube. My name's TJ, and until next time, we are signing off.